get the absolute pleasure and honor of introducing our top diva for the weekend. And I'm doing my best to not make her nervous, but I'm going to try not to. Because Georgia, I first saw Georgia in New Orleans, right? You were in New Orleans. And I was like, ooh. I didn't have a girlfriend. I was single. I was like, ooh. And then I met Georgia. She wasn't, I know. Damn it, Bonnie. I call her cradle robber, but they were in the cradle when they got together, so that doesn't really count. So I met her a few years later, and I was like, wow, she's even nice, too. And then I read her book, and I was like, wow, she's got a girl. That sucks. I mean, yeah, so I have had a crush on Georgia Beers for I don't know how long, and my wife well knows it, and I remind her every year we come here, you know I have a crush on Georgia, right? She says, yes, dear, I know. It's all, and the waitress at the local cafe, but you know, that's beside the point. I'm apparently uneasy. I'm a sucker for brunettes. So, I wanted to come up with some witty, fun things to say about Georgia, but the best thing that I can say about Georgia Beers is she is the absolute nicest, most kind person that I've met at this conference, and it's bar none on you all people. So, because none of you is as nice as her, I'm just saying. She's always sweet and pleasure. I never say that in Georgia, in a way. So, she's always sweet, she's always nice, she's the most approachable person you will ever want to meet, and she is the most un-diva that you will ever meet. I mean, look at Lynn Ames, please.
Did you pay her to do that?
Oh yeah, I got the money in my wallet. Bonnie, not Georgia. Georgia is so unassuming, she would never even think to do that. Bonnie, on the other hand, it's like, hey, Patty. So anyway, there's all kinds of wonderful, witty things that I could probably come up with to say about Georgia Beers, but the most important thing is that she's here. She's a wonderfully talented woman. All I can say is thank God that she managed to start writing again, because we were worried there. You guys remember there was a little period when we didn't have any Georgia, and we were like, what the hell, where'd she go? Then she started writing again, and lo and behold, this Lambda Award winner, this Goldie Award winner, came back into the fold. And isn't it lovely? Yeah. Isn't it wonderful? One thing though, when I asked Georgia to be the keynote, oh my gosh, months ago, she wrote, are you effing kidding me? Are you serious? And I'm like, well, duh, I wouldn't write the email if it wasn't serious. And she was like, no, really, are you serious? Again, unassuming, right? So anyway, Georgia, before you come up here, I just want your autograph. Okay, everybody, give it up, Georgia Beers. Erase this a little bit. Holy crap, look at all you guys. Man, we got up for you. I hear it because I heard karaoke was a blast. I can't believe y'all are here. That's me, I said y'all. How cool is that? All right, let's get to it then. I'm so glad you guys are here. I'm so glad to be standing here. I cannot begin to tell you how honored I am to be here and standing in front of all of you guys at this moment. I've been attending this conference, like Daddy said, since its inception. That's 9 years. I am always psyched to be here. I'm always excited to watch and to learn and to meet and to listen. I'm always a little starstruck and a little giddy over the keynote speaker each year. So,
see your beautiful face.
Thank you. Poor people.
Turn them off.
Leave it.
start over. That's just lame. I'll just go to the being starstruck part. You remember that?
Yeah.
All right. Here we go. I'm always a little starstruck and a little giddy over the keynote speaker each year. So when I was asked to be keynote this year, flattered is not a strong enough word to describe how I felt. The first thing I thought of was all of the amazing women who came before me. The funny thing was, I was able to whip off every one of their names without having to look anything up. And that's because each one of them touched me, or moved me, or made me laugh in some way. And now I stand here, in the same place where they stood. The same spot, once occupied by Karen Callmaker, Ann Bannon, Catherine Forrest, Ellen Hart, Lee Lynch, J.M. Redmond, Jewel Gomez, and K.G. McGregor. These were all women who cemented the foundation and built the momentum and helped get the GCLS rolling. And I am so humbled to be walking in their footsteps. So thank you so much for having me. My Carson tape sip of water. All right, when I started working on this speech, I racked my brains to try to find just the right way to tie it to the theme of romance is the heart of Texas. I mean, come on, I'm a romance writer. This should be easy peasy, right? I came up with ideas, and then I tossed them. I actually wrote an entire speech, and then I decided it wasn't what I was going for, and I tossed that. It took a while, but it finally hit me, and it's pretty simple. Life is romance. The GCLS is romance. You and me, us, this is a big romance. As I said, thank you. As I said, my first GCLS conference was the first GCLS conference. In 2004, in New Orleans, in the summer. Believe me when I tell you, it was friggin' hot. It was hot, and it was sticky, and I'm pretty sure that I sweat the entire time. And now here we are, in the middle of Texas, at the end of June. I think it's going to be 101 today. So it's nice to see that some things never change.
We're all hot.
This is true, in more ways than one. In 2004, I had 2 books out, but I was greener than green, and I had never been to such a thing as a writing conference. I was ridiculously excited. This was an entire conference devoted to the celebration and the recognition of lesbian literature, and it was the only gathering of its kind as far as I knew, so I was woozy with anticipation. I signed up for every workshop and every talk and every panel I could fit into my schedule. And I wandered around like a kid at Disneyland for the first time, in awe of everything and everybody around me. Now those of you who know me know that I hate small talk, mostly because I suck at it. I'm a people watcher, and I did a lot of that. I can still see that big atrium off the lobby, the sunlight streaming in through those skylights in the high ceilings, the round tables laid out for anybody to take a seat if they needed to. So I sat at one of those round tables and I soaked it all in. Lesbians everywhere. Lesbian writers everywhere. I met my publisher Kathy face to face for the first time because up until then, all of our communication had been via email. I met women who were celebrities to me. I met Karen freaking Callmaker. Karen freaking Callmaker, the woman who wrote Wild Things and Touchwood and Painted Moon and all those other novels that were sitting dog-eared on my shelf at home. She was the keynote speaker that year, and I felt like I was the naive lesbian kid meeting Wonder Woman for the first time. I was totally starstruck. And you know what else? She was nice, and she was humble, and she was real. And I spent some time at the pool with her just talking. And we talked about our favorite books, and when I mentioned Curious Wine, she told me that she knew Catherine Forrest, and that Catherine was so kind and wonderful, and that often she had to be reminded that she was a lesbian icon, that lesbians looked up to her. And I very distinctly remember telling Karen that she filled those same shoes for me, and for lesbian readers like me. It was a totally surreal moment that I will never ever forget. GCLS gave me that. Through various conferences along the way, I met amazing women who have become my friends. K.G. McGregor was quiet, kind of stoic the first time I met her. Sort of regal, a little bit untouchable, kind of like a movie star. Now I know better. Lois Glenn, our illustrious auctioneer, was shy, almost uncomfortable when I first met her. Now she is one of my very favorite GCLS fixtures every year. I hear you giggling, Lois. Lori Lake. What? Yeah. Lori Lake was a lot like me when we first met. She was new to the game, but she was eager to learn and grow in her craft. And now she writes, and she teaches, and she MCs, and she organizes, and she is one of the most sought-after faces at this conference because she has so much she wants to give to others. I've seen so many women here change and grow and improve and become teachers to the next generation of great lesbian writers, and every year I am proud and I am amazed. And now here I am, standing at this podium, looking out over this sea of faces. Some of you I've seen many, many times. Some of you I know very well. Some of you are completely new to me. And you're new to this gathering. And you know what? I want to have a little romance with you guys, okay? Let's consider this our meet cute. You guys know what a meet cute is? It's a phrase that they generally use in screenwriting, and it describes a situation in which a future romantic couple meets for the first time in a way that's considered adorable or entertaining or amusing. And since every one of us in this room is at least a little bit adorable or entertaining or amusing, this will be our meet cute, because that's how all romances begin. Romance. It's a funny word, isn't it? It has about 10 different definitions, according to Webster's Dictionary. Carson Tate stole 3 of them from me yesterday, but not my favorites. So first, a fictitious tale of wonderful and extraordinary events characterized by a non-realistic and idealizing use of the imagination, which is kind of a backhanded compliment, really. Second, a love affair. I like that one. Simple and to the point. I mean, come on, who doesn't love a little romance, right? Even the hardest of us, even those of us with the toughest skins, still like a little bit of romance. But take a look at today's world. All the violence, all the cruelty, what is going on? We have people shooting up schools. We have men holding women captive for years on end. We have women stabbing their boyfriends in the bathroom and then shooting them to be sure they're dead. What is happening? Where has the romance gone? Romance used to be huge. Huge. Think about the old movies. Gone with the Wind, Casablanca, My Fair Lady, The Sound of Music. Think about the books. You couldn't throw a stone in a library or a bookstore in the 80s without hitting something by Danielle Steele. What happened? Where did it all go? I don't know when it started, but it seems romance became a dirty word of sorts, somewhere along the line. You say romance and people scoff. They start with the complaints. You've heard them. Maybe you've even said them. Romance is formulaic. Well, yeah, it is. You know what? So is most literature. When you took literature in high school, didn't you learn about character and plot development, about introduction, the building of tension, about the climax, about the denouement? Didn't you learn all that stuff? Isn't pretty much every novel structured on those same items? And like it or not, most people expect the formula. When you pick up a mystery, don't you expect a body, some suspects, some clues, and a killer? Did anybody watch the TV series The Killing when it first came out? It was one giant whodunit. The entire ad campaign centered on the line, "Who killed Rosie Larson?" It was fantastically written, subjurated from the beginning. Except that at the end of the 13-episode season, they didn't tell you who did it. People were furious. I was furious. I wanted the payoff. I wanted the formula because that's what I signed on for. That's why I invested so much time, and when I didn't get it, I revolted. They did tell you who the killer was in the second season, but by that time they'd lost so many viewers the show got canceled. Now they've since brought it back to try again, and they're promising to reveal the killer by the end of the season this time, but do you see what I mean? They underestimated the need, and more importantly, the expectation of the formula. It's the same with a romance. When you pick up a romance, don't you expect the meet cute, a conflict, some obstacles, and a happy ending? Yes, because that's the formula. And most genres are formulaic. The key is that a good writer can make the same formula seem new every time. That's what we romance writers strive to do. That's what all writers strive to do. Another complaint is that romance is unrealistic. Okay, sometimes, maybe, I suppose it can be. Maybe the characters are larger than life. Maybe the situations are unusual or even contrived. Maybe in some cases. But think about why people read romance. To escape. Romance is a form of escapism. And let's face it, who wants to escape to reality? Not me. The complaint that really gets me though, and I think all of the romance writers in here will understand, is the one that says that romance writers aren't as good as real writers. I hate this one, it makes me angry. Unfortunately, it's a very common attitude, and in researching this speech, I found tons of insults leveled at romance writers and the romance genre in general. I'm not sure if it's a good thing or a bad thing, but this attitude of romance being lesser than permeates mainstream fiction as well as lesbian fiction. You may know that I have issues with Nicholas Sparks. Big issues with Nicholas Sparks. Do you know who he is? Yes. Wrote The Notebook, Nights in Rodanthe, Safe Haven, among others. The man is a bajillionaire. I've lost count of how many of his books have been made into movies, and I admit to not being able to flip the channel past The Notebook if it's on TV, though I think that has more to do with Rachel McAdams than Nicholas Sparks, but whatever.
Just saying.
Yeah, just saying. He refuses to admit that he writes romance. Refuses. It's insulting to him. He's offended when somebody says this to him. I found an interview with him where he says, quote, "If you look for me, I'm in the fiction section. Romance has its own section," unquote. Do a Google search on him, seriously. Find an interview with him. Find any interview with him, you'll see. So the idea that romance writers aren't as good as real writers even comes from actual romance writers. I also found an interesting quote from writer Jennifer Weiner. Do you guys know who she is? She wrote In Her Shoes, The Next Best Thing. She's considered a chick lit writer, though I don't know who decides these things, but that's what she's considered. So she did an interview with another writer, and they were talking about how Jennifer was barely getting a mention in the New York Times, even though her chick lit book was selling really, really well. And why is it that when a man writes drama, he's considered a literary writer, and when a woman writes drama, she's considered a chick lit writer? I don't know what that is. But Jennifer then said, quote, "And if you write romance, forget about it. You'll be lucky if they spell your name right on the bestseller list," unquote. So even the writers that don't write romance know that the romance writers get the short end of the stick when it comes to getting credit for their talent. You guys familiar with the website AfterEllen.com?
Oh, yeah.
It's a site devoted to tracking lesbian visibility in movies and television and books, all kinds of media. They focus more on movies and television, but they do have a monthly book column where they choose 3 lesbian books by lesbian writers to recommend. I read it, it's a great column. Except I followed that site for years and I don't know that they have ever recommended a romance novel. They don't even seem to touch on them very often. And that's our own community. Even our own community sometimes overlooks us. So to make myself feel better, I did some more research. Because I was curious about the numbers. I know that way more people read romance than admit that they read romance. Frankly, that's one of the things that's so awesome about the lesbian literature community. Most of you guys who read romance and love it aren't afraid to say so. As a romance writer, I thank you for that. Now, I also know that there are some of you who read it but won't fess up. So, come on, it's time to come out of the romance closet, people. It's okay. It's okay. So numbers. I found some really interesting, enlightening stuff from the Business of Consumer Book Publishing earlier this year. So first of all, in 2012, romance was the top performing category on the bestseller lists. So we're talking about the New York Times bestseller list, the USA Today bestseller list, and the Publishers Weekly bestseller list. Like 3 biggies. Top performing category, which is pretty impressive. So listen to this. In 2012, the science fiction genre generated $590 million. Okay? Mystery generated $728 million. Romance, $1.438 billion. Give it up, romance writers, come on. So romance outsells all other genres, which means that romance writers like Nora Roberts and Debbie McComber, who are supposedly not as good as real writers, I'm hoping are laughing all the way to the bank. I don't know if romance is making a comeback, or if this is how it's always been, but I have hope. One of the biggest movies last year was a romance. Any guesses? Carlene, where are you?
Hi, what?
Never mind, I got it. Silver Linings Playbook. Yep, Silver Linings Playbook, if you break it down, follows a romance formula. Interesting, I am on the programming committee at home for our LGBT Film Festival. So I basically help screen the incoming LGBT films and help to decide what ones are going to go into the festival. It's interesting because many of my fellow programmers are edgy and artsy and young film students, and they tend to like the edgy and the artsy films, and they scoff at the romances. But guess which ones always sell out? Guess which ones you need to get to early or you won't get a seat? Guess which ones the women always like the most, without fail? The romances, always. Now another question that comes to mind for me, what has technology done to romance? On the one hand, it brings people together. Many of you wouldn't be here if it weren't for the internet. Many of you wouldn't have met your friends, your publisher, your partner, if it weren't for the internet. I would not be standing here if it weren't for the internet. All true. But technology has also created this force field of smartphones and computer screens and keyboards that take the place of face-to-face meetings. At the first GCLS, there was no texting. That night when I got back from the pool, I had to run back to my hotel room, boot up my laptop, plug it into the phone line, wait for it to connect, open my email, and type up a note to Bunny that said, "Oh my God, I just met Karen Kalmaker." During that conference, we actually had to talk to each other, and God forbid, look at each other, like make eye contact. The truth is, we don't do that very much anymore. We don't do it often. I worry about this up-and-coming generation. I have an 18-year-old niece at home. She's about to go off to college. I honestly wonder how many people or telephone poles she's going to run into on her way to class because she's busy looking down at her phone instead of looking at the faces of the people who are walking past her. Of course, chances are that people who are walking past her are also looking down at their phones. And don't get me wrong, I am not a fan of eye contact. I'm an introvert. And most of us introverts are not only terrible at eye contact, we avoid it at all costs. But it's necessary, isn't it? That connection. Don't we need it? That feeling that we're being listened to, that we're being given the attention of the person that we're speaking to. As human beings, don't we need that? A romance isn't a romance without a personal connection. And I worry that we're losing that. Am I wrong? Incidentally, these are the conflicts and obstacles in our romance this morning. Y'all still with me? All right. What comes after the conflict or the obstacle in the romance? You guys have read them? You've written enough of them? What was that? The climax. Thank you. Thank you, Kathy. Like I said, here's the thing. A romance is not a romance. A romance isn't a romance without a personal connection. It just does not happen. Even if you're on Match.com or you're in a chat room or wherever you might meet somebody online today, even if you're sure that you have fallen head over heels for those words on the screen, the deal isn't quite sealed until you meet face to face, right? You have to have that personal connection to solidify your romance. It doesn't work if you don't. This conference, it's that meeting. It's that connection. It's a romance between readers and writers, between writers and publishers, between publishers and customers, and everybody in between. And don't forget, all the writers here are also readers. I'm just like you. I chased down Melissa Braden yesterday and had her sign my copy of her newest book. I have to catch up with V.L. Miller later and see what her next novel's due out. I know that she's writing one because I follow her on Facebook. I'm a fan too, just like you guys. And this conference isn't just for me as a writer. It's my chance to connect with the people who write the books that I love. Bottom line is this: we are not working against each other. We work better together. And believe me, I've been around the block more than once. I know these things. We work better together. We are not competitors. We are not competitors. What we are, we're kindred spirits, brought together once a year by the one thing that we all have in common: a love of words and books and compelling, amazing stories about women like us. We come to connect, in person, face to face, because we're better together, and don't you let anybody tell you differently.
Amen.
Thank you.
So here we are, all of us, all together in a big hotel. We're talking, and we're eating, and we're listening, and we're drinking, and we're dancing, and we're singing. We will leave here feeling more creative and more alive than we have in a long time. The juices will be flowing. We'll all be smiling. We'll be exhausted but sated. Sounding familiar at all? And there's our climax. The GCLS has changed my life. Is this corny and melodramatic? Yeah, it is. Of course it is. It's also true. I wouldn't be doing what I'm doing, both writing lesbian fiction for a living and standing here at this podium, if not for this organization. I've watched it develop and falter. I've watched it shapeshift and change captains and crews. I watched it stumble. I watched it recover. I've watched it find its footing and grow into something of great significance. It's been quite a sight to see, and it astonishes me every day. I'm one of the quiet ones. I don't set up committees. I don't vocalize my ideas to the board. I renew my membership, and I sit back, and I watch, and my heart swells with pride. So if I leave you with one thing today, it's the fact that I am a product of this organization. I am a product of the GCLS. As far as I know, this is the only organization of its kind. And the women I named at the beginning of this talk, they were already on their paths at the time that they spoke to us. But me, my path was lit by the GCLS, and I will be forever grateful. For you newbies, first of all, somebody's calling. You newbies, I hope you are all having a terrific time. Are you? Yes. Good, because my next line says, in fact, I know you are, so. I have friends from home who are here for the first time, and I envy them this first conference. Soak it in, because you will never forget your first. I know that you've learned tons of stuff from writers you admire. I bet some of you had some incredible pitch sessions with publishers. Many of you may be well on your way to fulfilling your dream of writing lesbian fiction, just like I was once upon a time. My advice to you is this. This is not a one-night stand. It's not over. Don't walk away. Stay in touch. Keep coming back. Stay in contact with the people you've met here, because many of them will be your friends for life. This is not a one-night stand. This is the real thing. This is, hopefully, forever. So each year, we will reconvene. We'll come back together in a new city. Maybe not always one that's hot and sticky, but a girl can dream. And we'll talk, and we'll catch up, and we'll teach, and we'll drink, and we'll dance, and we'll learn. We'll put aside our computers, at least for a little while, and we'll be face to face. And we'll look each other in the eye, and we'll touch, and we'll shake hands, and we'll kiss, and we'll feel better. Once a year, we'll have that giant collective climax together. After all, we are lesbians. Once a year should be enough. Coming back again and again. And that will keep our romance alive. And you know what that is? That is our happily ever after. Before we go, our story has an epilogue, so bear with me.
I love epilogues!
Take me a second to get it set up, but let me give you a little intro first. Before you go, our story has an epilogue. I wanted to try to give some more help to the aspiring writers here this year. So I tried to decide what question people ask me the most with regard to my writing. And more often than not, they want to know about my method. How do I write? What does a typical day look like for me? Obviously, everybody's different. Every writer works in whatever way is best for her. Some writers go on binges and they write nonstop for hours. Some writers work hard and then count their number of words for the day and post them on Facebook. Which doesn't make the rest of us feel like catastrophic failures at all. Carson takes, so don't worry about it. Some writers feverishly construct speeches 6 days before their deadline. Everybody's different. So I decided to create a teaching tool to actually show you what my day's like. And I hired a camera crew to come in and follow me throughout a typical writing day. True story. I wanted them to catch every detail, every specific scientific thing I do that goes into the writing of a lesbian romance novel. Remember, this is meant as a tool, as a guide for you. So I will have it up on my website after this conference, and you can refer back to it anytime you feel the need for a refresher, free of charge, okay? So hold this up. Bear with me for a second while I set it up.
I like free. I thought we could turn the lights down now. No, Laura, we can't turn the lights down now. We won't be able to see the PowerPoint. Oh, there we go. See the PowerPoint.
Let me get that for you, Liz.
Microphone, thank you, Steph. All right. Everybody ready? Ready to learn? Yeah. All right, here we go. That's it. That's all it is.